Microtransaction. For gamers, it is a dirty word. It gets far more hate than DLC ever did, back when gamers were upset about all content for a game not being available upon release, especially if that DLC was already present on the disc. Now in many cases, the actual game isn't even on the disc, or at least the final version of the game. Instead, we have day one, week one, and monthly updates to fix bugs or add missing content. It is funny to think about, but I believe people would be happy to go back to the days when there was an entire game plus DLC already on the disc on day one. So today, we're going to talk about how Bethesda Game Studios' upcoming big games, both Starfield and The Elder Scrolls 6, may be affected by microtransactions. Now, Bethesda has been no stranger to these criticisms. You need not look any farther than Fallout 76, but even more recently, Rage 2's Day 1 patch was about 13 gigabytes, and in that game you can buy Rage coins to purchase in-game items at up to $35 for 4,500 coins. We've heard plenty about Fallout 76's Atom Shop, where most people seem to agree that items are overpriced, such as they are. However, Bethesda is far from the worst offender when it comes to either Day 1 patches or microtransactions. On a scale of greed and releasing incomplete games, I would place them at about a 5, with Nintendo closer to 1 and Electronic Arts closer to a 10. It wasn't always like this though. While Bethesda had a few fits and starts, like Horse Armor, they also had huge DLC add-ons for their games that were well worth purchasing. DLC like Shivering Isles, Dragonborn, and more recently Far Harbor. In fact, Fallout 4 didn't have any microtransactions at all. Neither did Skyrim. Now, Bethesda has been toying with the idea of paid mods for a while, and you can argue about the veracity of their claims to get modders paid for their work, but in my opinion, the Creation Club and paid mods in general is an entirely different topic. There are plenty of people who don't ever use mods, so that part of the Bethesda community is an entirely different beast, and generally doesn't have anything to do with the base experience. So, doing some research, beginning in 2015 when Fallout 4 released, here are the games Bethesda Softworks has published and what they had in terms of microtransactions. Fallout 4, no microtransactions. Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, no microtransactions. Dishonored 2, no microtransactions. Doom 2016, no microtransactions. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, no microtransactions. The Evil Within 2, no microtransactions. Prey, no microtransactions. I'm not including Fallout Shelter or The Elder Scrolls Blades because they are both mobile and free-to-play games, so obviously they include microtransactions, though, in Bethesda's defense, neither of them includes ads, which is nice. But now we get to Bethesda's most recent releases, Fallout 76 and Rage 2. Prior to Fallout 76's release, games either published or developed by Bethesda simply didn't include microtransactions. So what changed, and what can we expect in the future? Well, in this case, history may not be a good way to look at this. Though Bethesda has historically not included microtransactions in their games, their most recent releases suggest that this is something that they will likely be doing moving forward. That being said, I don't think all hope is lost. First, for Fallout 76, it is an online game where personal interactions are encouraged, lending to personalization of player characters. Also, the content the game is updated with throughout at least the first year is all free. Presumably, the microtransactions, nearly all of which are cosmetic, fund this new content so that players don't have to buy new DLC packs. From that perspective, it makes sense. And I've played a few dozen hours of Fallout 76 and not bought anything on the Atom Shop, so I imagine there are plenty of other players who won't either. Rage 2, on the other hand, is a much more difficult pill to swallow. While it most definitely has microtransactions, there are a few distinctions that set it apart from your standard AAA fare. First, they are all cosmetic. Second, each of the items available for purchase can be found in the game. And third, there are no loot boxes. On the microtransaction hate scale, Rage 2 ranks pretty low. Still, for a Bethesda game, it is an outlier. In the near future, Bethesda is releasing both Doom Eternal and Wolfenstein Youngblood. Though neither of their previous games had microtransactions, that is no guarantee that these won't, so we will have to wait and see. We also know that Arcane Studios, the developers of Prey, were recently hiring a monetization designer, presumably with the intent of including microtransactions in their upcoming games. This is merely speculation, but the likelihood is pretty strong that if you hire someone in this role, then microtransactions will be included in a game. So that brings us to Bethesda Game Studios' next big games, Starfield and The Elder Scrolls VI. We will start with Starfield because 1, it is releasing much sooner, and 2, because of that, it may be more beholden to the microtransaction trend that is happening now, while by the time The Elder Scrolls VI releases, well, who knows what companies will be doing to monetize games. The unfortunate truth is that games set in space can be a haven for microtransactions. Look no further than Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen. If Starfield includes different ships for the player to use, that opens the door to all kinds of microtransaction opportunities. Elite Dangerous's microtransactions are all strictly cosmetic, however, so if Bethesda chooses to include microtransactions, well, I hope that this is how they do it. But it is a fine line to walk. Though Bethesda has received a lot of fairly placed negative feedback over the last 6 months, I think they are still perceived to be a different kind of company, making different kinds of games than, say, Electronic Arts. There are still plenty of people who love Bethesda games and just want to enjoy great single-player experiences. In fact, most of Fallout 76's backlash has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that there are microtransactions in the game, and Rage 2's microtransactions haven't elicited any kind of outrage, that I have seen, anyway. Bethesda has a decision to make, then, when they release Starfield. Do they want to build this game and release it without microtransactions like their previous major titles? Let the game stand on its own 2 legs, get good reviews, good word of mouth, and be able to be modded. That's how they have become and stayed so relevant, in my opinion. Or, is the lure of microtransactions too much? Making all kinds of extra money for ship skins, player outfits, custom helmets, or whatever else they may include might be too much to turn their back on, especially for a game in development as long as Starfield has been. What I would like to avoid is paying for entirely new ships, upgraded warp drives, oxygen tanks that last longer, or whatever else it is that they may come up with. Basically, I am okay with cosmetic microtransactions, but I draw the line there. In reality, I would like for Bethesda to eschew microtransactions altogether, but that may be far too idealistic. Now, for The Elder Scrolls VI, much further away from release, we must realize that games may be far different at that time than what they are today. The next generation of game consoles may release, and games could be priced starting at $69.99. That extra $10 per copy sold would help tremendously to offset the exploding budgets of AAA games. In fact, I expect for this change to take place. Games have been priced at $60 for well over a decade now, with development costs skyrocketing. An extra $10 for a game selling 10 million copies, which The Elder Scrolls VI absolutely will, probably in the first month, is an extra $100 million. With that in mind, and not even counting deluxe and collector's editions that they will inevitably release, then they may not need to include microtransactions at all. Of course, that is me being idealistic again. There's nothing to say that Bethesda wouldn't pocket the extra $10 and also include microtransactions, right? I would hope that Bethesda would look at the mainline Elder Scrolls games as sacrosanct, free from this sort of thing. The truth is that, for The Elder Scrolls VI at least, it is too far away for us to really do anything other than wildly speculate, which is what I'm doing. For Starfield, Bethesda's most recent game releases point to the likelihood of microtransactions. That being said, if we get Doom Eternal later this year and it doesn't have microtransactions at all, then there may still be hope for Starfield. What are your thoughts on microtransactions in Bethesda games? Are you okay with them if they are just cosmetic? Do you not care either way? Let's discuss in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Maybe click that bell icon. And as always, thank you so much for watching.